And to analyze this very close relationship that there is between Mexico and Canada, and how this debate that is taking place, especially in the United States, could affect this relationship. Joining me today is Beatriz Leisegui. She's a trade expert and former Undersecretary of International Trade, Alfredo Phillips, Vice President of Torex Gold Resources, and Armando Ortega, who is the Chamber of CanChan, which is the Canadian Chamber here in Mexico. Welcome to all three of you. Thank you so much for joining us this Saturday morning.
Thank you for inviting us.
You know, sometimes I feel that we don't talk enough about the relationship between Canada and Mexico. We are so focused as to what's happening in the United States. I mean, you work for a Canadian company. What is the status of the relationship right now in terms of business and commerce?
Well, I think the relationship is a long-standing relationship. Mm-hmm. It's a long relationship in terms of age, and it's grown much better and much closer recent years. Mm-hmm. I think if you look at Canadian investment in Mexico, you've got mining as the premier investing. Mm-hmm. You've got aerospace. I mean, you have energy. You have a mm-hmm. very broad base of investment. Mm-hmm. And I believe the relationship right now is probably the best it's been in quite some time.
Yeah. You know, Beatriz, you were Undersecretary at Economy, and I know you're following very closely what's happening in the United States in terms of the approval, the debate and the approval of the USMCA. Could you just give us an update as to what's literally happened in the last 48 hours?
Yes, well, things have... Once two events have happened recently that were very important for the approval of NAFTA, which is the issuance of the International Trade Commission assessment mm-hmm. with regard to the new agreement, mm-hmm. and the other was the passage of Mexico's labor reform. Those were like the two preconditions that the Democrats demanded in order to either consider any approval of the agreement. Mm-hmm. And so those two things happened recently, but and so there has been pronunciations with regard to these two issues. With regard to the ITC Commission, as mm-hmm. it was expected, mm-hmm. The numbers are not that good. The impact of what was negotiated will be very minor.
In the sense for the United States,
for the
right
United
now.
States.
It would increase, it benefits the United States, but not to the level that Trump was promising, right?
Very minor. The numbers that have been released are 0.30% mm-hmm. in their GDP, mm-hmm. 0.12% in employment. Mm-hmm. So it really doesn't move anything. Mm-hmm. So they say it's the same agreement with a little bit of just improvement. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really address our long-standing concerns about NAFTA, mm-hmm. and so it's not clear. So they said we think that it has to go further in certain issues, and yeah. So that's with regard to the assessment, the economic assessment, mm-hmm. and then the other is a labor reform, which they say it has to mm-hmm. go. It has to. The provisions in the USMCA have to be much more stricter than what was negotiated and what was and that the impact of the labor reform will not be sufficient for them.
You know, Armando, there is a concern that the USMCA is not going to be that the Democrats basically are going to stop the debate, which means it can't be voted on. And there was some interesting news the last 24 hours, the last 48 hours, which seemed to indicate that the White House may be willing to reopen some of the language that was negotiated. And this could potentially create a lot of tension, not only between the United States and Mexico, but clearly between the United States and Canada.
Well, of course, it's an ugly battle, because mm-hmm. Democrats don't want to give a victory to Mr. Trump mm-hmm. before the start of the electoral process next year. Mm-hmm. So they would love to hit him on that front. Mm-hmm. And labor, in the case of Mexico, and other bilateral issues with Canada are a good justification for that. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there are issues going on, and for example, Mr. Grassley, who is the president of the Senate Finance Committee, a Republican from Iowa, has said that these Section 232 restrictions on aluminum and steel needs to be scrapped before the agreement can be ratified.
Right.
So you have, even within the Republican Party, not to talk about Democrats, a battle. And if the agreement, and of course all this is hypothetical, but if the agreement were to be reopened, I think it would be very difficult to see that it could, of course, be completely ratified this year, least to say next year that
when
would
there's
be
elections.
election. So it probably would take us till year 2021.
And that, of course, I imagine for Canadian companies here in Mexico, that could have an impact, Philip. I mean, what happens with Canadian companies where we're starting to see kind of a potential void? I mean, NAFTA's in place. I mean, that's our understanding. But I mean, if you're a Canadian company, are you going to think about it once or twice before you increase your investment? I mean, what is the Canadian community, business community thinking at this point?
I mean, the issues in investment are really with rule of law and stability. I mean, we're a mining company, for example, so our investments take 30 years. So you won't be doing new investments unless you have certainty that the playing field isn't going to change. And you have things that Armando was mentioning, for example, on the labor side, Mr. Trump not to be confused with Mr. Trump, the AFL-CIO head has
which is
said,
the union.
Which is the union, and the largest union in the U.S., has said that he doesn't like the labor law because there's no guarantee of implementation. So he says, well, it's beautiful in the writing, it looks good, so let's see how it's going to be implemented. So those are areas that are left open in terms of certainty. I mean, you need legal certainty, but you also need labor certainty.
So
you need
here
to be able
Mexico,
to work with
Mexico went through all this trouble, and with some political cost for this government to pass this labor law, because there are complaints, and it may not be enough. Armando, there's an important event taking place talking about commerce in Canada and the importance of Canada.
Yeah, well, we are trying to take care of all those things, and we have our anchor event next May 16. And by the way, these two colleagues will be present there. It's so-called Cancham Day.
Yeah, we can see this is we can see in our screen the speakers and the
issues.
And the issues that are going to be debated.
It's a gesture to the new administration, and therefore we call it transformational times.
It
not
is.
Coincidentally.
Not coincidentally for everybody.
But the main message is that Canadian investments, in particular, and Canadian businesses want to be part of this transformation.
So, and then if anybody wants information, they want to participate, there you can see there you go. There you can see the entire information. Well, good luck with this event. I had the opportunity to participate in this event last year. It was fabulous, and above all, very informative. So thank you so much, all three of you, Beatriz, Felipe, Armando. And I'm going to see you in an hour in our Spanish-speaking version of this news program. So see you guys in about an hour. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's time for a quick break here on Adn40 News, so please don't go away. You got to come back. We'll be right back.